redeemed, rehabilitated, and real entertaining. This is the Carl Jackson Podcast.
Pride Month is a rejection of God in favor of oneself. Pride Month is a rejection of humility. Pride Month is a rejection of Western civilization. Pride Month is a rejection of all of the other attributes that make an individual unique. Pride Month is a rejection of national unity. Pride Month is a rejection of objective truth. Pride Month is a rejection of good and evil. I'm going to be talking about that, as well as the hypocrite that is Sunny Hostin and of The View and her portrayal of the patriarchy. I'm going to sound off on that, as well as the man dressed as a woman at the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique that is never going to have peace and is a threat to Western civilization. That and more on this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. All right, welcome back to the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Today's show is brought to you in part by MyPillow, MyPillow.com. Mike Lindell, the fabulous CEO of MyPillow, a great patriot, a guy that is making sure that America remains great or greatness is restored in America. Absolutely appreciate him. By the way, he has a deal available exclusive to my listeners, the new MyPillow 2.0. It comes with the same patented adjustable feel as the original MyPillow. But now it has this outer layer, this new temperature regulating thread that makes it softer, smoother, and cooler. I think I forgot the most important part. That is, buy one, get one free. That's the offer that is exclusive to my listeners. Remember, when you buy this pillow, not only will you get a better night's sleep, but you're going to be contributing to American jobs and American manufacturing. God knows we need that. All you have to do is go to mypillow.com, click on the radio listener square that's at the top of the page, and enter my name, Carl, in that box. All right, CARL. Or if you prefer, give them a call at 800-858-0263, 800-858-0263. Okay, now listen. The topic for today is why I believe Pride Month needs to be replaced with Fidelity Month. I read an excellent column. It was at the Daily Signal. However, the idea was conjured up by a professor, and now his name escapes me, but I will. Oh, here it is. Princeton professor Robert P. George. And he had an excellent idea of why and how, I guess, we should replace Pride Month. And I'm looking forward to getting into this conversation. He wants to replace it with Fidelity Month. I'll talk about the significance of that. But before I do, I want to dive into a video, something that I don't do typically right off the bat. And by the way, I think we're bringing back Jackson's 5. I'll be honest with you guys. I was just kind of playing around with the podcast. I'm really trying to get a feel for this thing. It's so different. I obviously have been trained in radio for not quite a decade, but nearly a decade. And so adjusting to podcasting is just different, to be frank with you. And we're trying to make sure that you guys are happy and pleased with the product. So please feel free to message us on Facebook or wherever else we are on social media, Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on True Social, Getter at the Carl Jackson Show, and just sound off. Let us know if you like the product. But, sometimes I think I'm going to be talking about individual stories or giving an individual interview, but I want to make sure you guys know me from radio. A lot of you know me from radio, and you knew me to bring you the news and keep you up to date. It's a little different in the podcast world because you guys can tune in anytime you want to, and the news may not be relevant. However, I'm a news guy. All right, I'm a political guy at heart, and I don't want to lose that even in podcasting. So I will bring you the news of the day. I will bring you Jackson's 5, but I will not marinate on it. I will take a specific topic, and I'm just going to sound off on one specific topic. However, I will give you the headline. So at least if you're listening to this podcast daily, and I hope you are everywhere you go to get your podcast, Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble, we need you guys to subscribe on YouTube and Rumble, please, and rate and review us. but I'll sound off on the headlines. So you can be sure that if you're a regular listener, you'll get some headlines. But there will be days where I may have an interview, and it'll be an exclusive interview where I will just focus on that. When I'm not doing interviews, however, I'm going to make sure that I at least give you the headlines. However, we're going to focus on a major story or a major topic, and that's what I'm going to do today. I think Pride Month needs to be replaced. This isn't about hating gays. Actually, I think this is a more loving way to go about not just loving gay people, but all people, and loving Americans in general. But I think Pride Month needs to be replaced with Fidelity Month. But first, I got to sound off on a hypocrite. Sunny Hostin of The View is an absolute hypocrite. I want to play this video for you of Sunny Hostin. I don't mean to sound mean, but this lady, she went to an Ivy League school, from what I understand. She had to get a scholarship. It had to be solely based upon affirmative action. Otherwise, she's just a complete fake and fraud. But here's the video that I want to play for you. Many of you have already heard this video, but I want to offer my 2 cents because you haven't heard it from me. So I want to offer my 2 cents. This is Sunny Hostin of The View talking about the patriarchy and white women that want to follow down the path or the road of the white patriarchy. Here's Sunny Hostin. Go ahead and roll the clip. Por favor, Gabe.
I have a similar theory, and it's borne out when you look at the studies and when you read books like it's a book that came out a long time ago about she owned property as well, meaning white women owned slaves as well. I think that white women in particular, want to protect the patriarchy here because it's to their benefit. Yeah. They want to make sure that their husbands do well. They want to make sure that their sons do well. They want to make sure that their children do well, and they want to make sure that they do well. Most of the women in some of these studies are married white women, and they do fall in line with what their husbands are doing, how their husbands are voting.
Okay, all right. So that is Sunny Hostin breaking down the white male patriarchy and white women that seem to go along with the white male patriarchy. But there's a problem that's there's a problem that Sunny Hostin said. First, let me quickly define patriarchy. It's defined as a system of society or government in which the father or the eldest male is head of the family and descent is traced through the male line. In other words, all civil societies that have ever existed. But beyond that, Sunny Hostin failed to tell you that she's a complete and utter hypocrite. Obviously, she's a very successful woman, but oh my God, her husband happens to be a doctor. Her son happens to be entering, what is it? Is it Harvard, an Ivy League school? So Sunny Hostin herself must be falling prey to the patriarchy. She's a total fraud. She's a total hypocrite. I just want you guys to know this is a lady that lives luxury beliefs. She wants to opine to the masses of dumb people as she sees fit, but she's living the very beliefs that she condemns. She's a fake, she's a phony, she's a fraud. Okay, now we can move on from Sunny Hostin. I got another video. I want Gabe to go ahead and get that video up. But on the meanwhile, while he gets that video ready, I'm just going to give you some of the headlines before I talk to you about why it is time to replace Pride Month with Fidelity Month. So while Gabe is getting that prepared, let me just go ahead and wake up my computer. It was taking a nap here, or should I say laptop, lest I sound as old as I actually am. All right, so now here's the deal. All right, so here's some of the headlines. Here's some of the headlines for the day that I would like to share with you that are very important. Obviously, you guys know that there was a bipartisan debt ceiling legislation that passed, and now it heads to the Senate. It's not final yet, but it has passed the House in a vote of 314 to 117. Among Democrats, you had 165 that voted yes, 46 that voted no. Among Republicans, you had 149 that voted yes, 71 that voted no. According to NBC, the House reached the vote last night, the 218 vote threshold last night. That was the majority that was needed to pass the debt ceiling bill, in spite of opposition from what they call hardline Republicans, people that don't want us to go bankrupt. I can't stand when they use that terminology, but that's the way mainstream media does it. While some voters could change and the legislation hasn't formally passed just yet, it now appears to have the votes needed to clear the lower chamber. And now we know that it, in fact, has. And now it has to be sent to the Senate for their approval. It will be official when the chamber gives a vote and reads the final tally. And I do believe all of that did occur last night. So I got into the debt ceiling issue yesterday. Please check out the podcast that I did yesterday with Brandon Arnold of the National Taxpayers Union. We outlined some of the good and the bad. There's still issues, some of which I forgot to mention in that podcast, border issues and all that kind of stuff, border security issues that need to be covered. That's going to occur in an appropriations bill a little later on this year. We'll get to that shortly. But another headline that I think is very important in Jackson's 5, Christopher Wray, he's the head of the FBI. The FBI is now going to finally allow, or Chris Wray, I should say this, confirms there's a form linking then Vice President Joe Biden to a bribery scheme. Remember the news that broke that said Joe Biden had received $5 million or so, or the Biden crime family had received $5 million or so. Well, the FBI has documentation to prove it. They have not been wanting to give up the form. You have the House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer, had been threatening to hold Christopher Wray in contempt. I've been saying that it's time to move past this nonsense and stop threatening to hold people in contempt and just do it. So these fools get the point. They need to start taking us seriously. But nonetheless, just here's a little bit of piece of the story. The FBI is going to allow leaders of the Oversight Committee to view the form that is known as FD 1023 a form in which they say proves President Biden was involved in a $5 million criminal bribery scheme with the foreign national. The internal unclassified FD 1023 from apparently details an arrangement for an exchange of money for policy decisions. So our vice president allegedly exchanged policy decisions for cash money. $5 million to be exact. The Republicans have said and issued a subpoena for last month. The oversight chair, James Comer, Senator Chuck Grassley, the Republican senator from Iowa, spoke with FBI Director Christopher Wray by phone on Wednesday. That would be yesterday, and offered to let Comer and ranking member Jamie Raskin view the documents at the FBI headquarters in an attempt to stave off Comer's threat to hold Wray in contempt of Congress. No way, Jose. That form needs to be released to the entire committee. I'm tired of these fools and the FBI pretending or acting as if they are a fourth branch of the government, completely unchecked. This nonsense has to stop. They're trying to cover for the Biden family because they're trying to cover their own behinds. Obviously, if Biden is corrupt, or the deep state or knows that they're corrupt, and they're covering up their own wrongdoings. Betcha bottom dollar. Headline number 3, multiple DOJ whistleblowers tell of mishandled evidence in the Hunter Biden probe. Well, you don't say. According to CBS, multiple Justice Department whistleblowers have come forward to Republican Senator Chuck Grassley as part of his ongoing investigation into the Biden crime family. Those are my words. Pretty clever. The whistleblower disclosures raised concerns about the Hunter Biden investigation, with allegations including, quote, irregular handling of evidence, and a claim that, quote, standard investigatory procedures were not being followed, close quote, allegedly hindering the probe's progress. More specifically, whistleblowers said that during the FBI investigation, derogatory evidence related to President Biden's son, that would be Hunter Biden, was wrongly labeled as disinformation. confirmation when it could be or had already been verified. So a bunch of cronies of the Biden crime family within the FBI. It's a sad state of affairs. They are corrupt. They have to be dismantled. I'm so sick and tired of these people talking about reforming the FBI. No, they need to be amputated. They really do. I'm so sick of that crap. Quite frankly, from a lot of weak-kneed Republicans. This is a bonus. I'm going to throw this in. You guys saw 9 teens have been charged, or you may have heard this story. There were a mob of teens that severely beat up 3 Marines. This was in San Clemente, California. They were popping off fireworks, I believe, more than likely illegally in California, somewhere near the beach or something. And then the Marines just asked them to stop. Obviously, a bunch of little numbskulls being crazy and wild. Well, one of the teens, as the Marines were walking away, one of the teens assaults them. The Marine goes back to defend himself. And then all of a sudden, all of these teens, about 20, 30 of them, jump in to beat these guys to a pulp. Fortunately, 9 of them have been arrested and charged. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But that was a bonus. Number 4 then would be Iran greatly grows supply of enriched uranium. So much for being nice and kind to Iran, right? You can't work with evil people. This should be we should understand this, right? The Biden administration, as well as the Obama administration, wanted to get along with Iran. They wanted this Iran nuclear deal, which was never a deal, by the way. Iran never agreed to it. Everything that Obama claimed they wanted, just like Biden, the Iranians never agreed to. They were like, yeah, sure. They never made anything formal. But Obama wanted a foreign policy win. Biden is in the same predicament. He's an absolute disastrous commander-in-chief, starting with the Afghanistan withdrawal. So Iran has reinstalled monitoring equipment and boosted its cooperation with international inspectors, even as its engineers added to stockpiles of uranium enriched closer to weapons grade. The global nuclear watchdog reported Wednesday that IAEA inspectors had raised concerns in March over the presence of uranium particles enriched to 84% levels of purity and chided Iran's slow response to separate investigations, raising the prospect of worsening tensions in the Middle East. So you have a more chaotic world under the Biden administration. Iran is growing much more closer to enriched uranium, ready to kill us, basically. Number 5, China prepares for the worst case scenarios in an effort to counter threats. We have to be really concerned about this, guys. I don't need to tell you that if you're listening to this show, but that's the headline. We are witnessing in real time, according to CNN, the transition from autocrat to dictator. Chinese leader Xi Jinping has called on his top national security officials to think about worst case scenarios and prepare for stormy seas as the ruling Communist Party hardens efforts to counter any perceived internal or external threats. All right, the latest stern instructions from Xi comes as Beijing faces a host of challenges, from a struggling economy. Things aren't good there, folks. To what it sees as an increasingly hostile international environment. So Xi wants to coalesce power. He wants to become a dictator. As things don't go so great in China, he has to worry about an uprising there. He has to worry about an internal threat. This makes this situation all the more dangerous. All right, so that's your Jackson's 5 for the day. Now I want to go to my second video. This is a homeboy. Homeboy is dressed up at the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique in Disneyland. This was a video that has gone viral. It has been seen tens and tens of millions of times. I have not offered my 2 cents. I want to play you the video, and then I want to offer my take on this video. Yeah, I'll offer my take on this video. So Gabe, go ahead and roll the video, por favor. This is a dude. Homeboy's name is Nick. He's dressed like a woman at the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique in Disneyland. Anyway, let's play the video. I'll respond.
So my name's Nick. I'm one of Fairy Godmother's apprentices. I'm here to shop you around and make all your selections for the day.
Okay, so let me respond to this video. This guy, and I'm not saying this to be mean, all right? He's a dude. He knows he's a dude. I mean, he's got a stash, for God's sake. I don't think it's kind. I don't think it's compassionate to refer to these people other than what they are. This is a man. And he should be treated like a man. And I believe he should act like a man, even if that requires therapy. Let me say this. This is why I say it's not compassionate when it comes to trying to accept people for whoever the hell they want to be for the day, whatever gender they want to be for the day. This guy will always struggle with himself internally. He will never, ever have any peace. He will always feel incomplete. He will always feel unhappy. You know why? Because he's going to forever battle to suppress his natural instinct to be a man. He's always going to suppress that. I don't care if he has almost spilled my. I don't care if he has a chop at the golf of me. I don't care what he does. He is always going to battle his natural instinct to be a man. That is not compassionate to say otherwise and to pretend like home dude could be a girl. He cannot. He will never, ever, no matter what he does, he will never be a woman. Not to mention that the confusion that he's causing with little boys, or I'm sorry, with little girls that walk up and they're like, oh my Lord, The Apprentice has a stash. I mean, for God's sakes, this is insane what we're living through. The second point, the hypocritical feminists, the ones like Sunny Hostin in the video that I played previously, that bash the patriarchy, are in part responsible for weak men that want to be women. I believe this onslaught of men wanting to be women has a lot to do with feminists that that want to act manly, that say that they don't want this toxic masculinity, but they're hypocrites like Sunny Hostin, who bashes the male patriarchy but lives within the white male patriarchy. I mean, she has a husband that's a rich doctor. She happens to be rich. Their son is going to Harvard. That is the epitome of the patriarchal system. What a fake or a moron. One of the two. But this lady is destroying real manhood, and quite frankly, so is this young man. And he's never going to have any peace. Also, I would say to Disney, these are a bunch of corporate pedophiles. I would say to you that if you're against Ron DeSantis' fight against Disney, I think you're a fake conservative. At least when it comes to social issues, at least be honest enough to say, you know what, I'm a fiscal conservative. You know, that whole mantra that's a bunch of BS in and of itself. I'm a fiscal conservative, but I'm not a social conservative. Well, let me tell you something. If you're against this fight against Disney that are allowing men to dress up like chicks and confuse children, there's something wrong with you. And I have no problem calling you a fake behind conservatives, just so you know. But here's what's happening. This young man is going to contribute to the fall of Western civilization. Listen up. Men are called to be protectors. Men are called to be providers. Men should be like policemen and heroic in that sense, soldiers. We should protect the community as well, as well as our family. That's why we should be police, soldiers, all these kind of things. We should be breadwinners. We should be the construction workers. We should be engineers. We should strive to be those things. But we should always know God so that we put everything in perspective. But first and foremost, besides being men, we should strive to be good dads and fathers, because we do have to be the patriarchy, because if it's not for us, society will fail to exist. All right. That's enough for that. All right, now let me go on to the topic at hand. What I really wanted to get to, and that is we need to replace Pride Month with Fidelity Month. So there was an excellent article, that appeared in the Daily Signal. Let me just give you the quick summary of it, and then we'll go through some of the talking points here. On June 1st, businesses, government, and even churches, sadly, will erect rainbow flags and publish proclamations about the importance of Pride Month, a celebration of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender identities. All right, so obviously Pride Month is meant to be exclusionary and intentionally offensive to people of faith, particularly Christians. It's supposed to be offensive and in your face. But there's some problems with Pride Month, right? Especially for Christians who do follow the tenets of the faith. God created humans, male and female. We know that. Marriage is between one man and one woman. We know that. You can name it anything you want. But when it comes to real marriage as opposed to fake marriage, the marriage that God honors is the marriage between a man and a woman. Nothing else. All right. Pride is a cardinal sin. It isn't a virtue. And these are things that we have to recognize. Again, God created male and female. Marriage is between man and woman. And pride is a sin. So the reason why there is Pride Month is because not only is it meant to be exclusionary, it's because there's people that it's because these people want to intentionally try to offend Christian. It's amazing to me. It's amazing to me. There's a Princeton professor. And as a result of this hostility towards God, a guy by the name of Robert P. George, he came up with this concept of Fidelity Month, and I'm all in. I don't know if I like the name. It doesn't flow as smooth as Pride Month, but I love the concept. So maybe you might have a different name for it, but I think this is something worth exploring. I think this is something that Christians should do, because we can't always react to stuff. Sometimes we just have to reframe. All right, I'm not gonna hate on you. You know what? But I'm gonna do this, and I think we have a responsibility to do something other than Pride Month, because I think Pride Month is destroying the nation. Quite frankly, I really do. I don't say that because I hate the term homophobe or transphobe. If you look at the definition of phobia, it doesn't even make sense, but the left can just make up words and then you have to go with them. Well, you don't have to, but that's the way that it seems to happen. So I can't stand the terms transphobe and homophobe. I don't know that there's a such thing. I don't know if there's a sickness that really exists, transphobe or homophobe. But anyway, this Princeton professor, Robert P. George, launched this effort to flip Pride Month on its head, and he dedicating the month to not to a specific interest group, but to a moral virtue. And that moral virtue is obviously fidelity. And I think this is a fabulous concept. All right, so Carl, what does fidelity mean? Well, it derives from the Latin word fides, which means faith or trust. Now, I didn't know that, but I get to pretend like I do, so I sound really smart. But listen, this is fascinating stuff to find out. So again, fidelity derives from the Latin word fides, F-I-D-E-S, and it means faith or trust. The word implies strict and continuing faithfulness. Listen, an obligation to trust or duty, an obligation, trust or duty, I should say. A strict and continuing faithfulness to an obligation, trust, or duty. So we don't need government or corporate permission in order to get this thing started or to embrace Fidelity Month. But I think it's something that we should do. Fidelity Month would dedicate the importance of fidelity to God, to spouses, family, etc., to our country and to our communities. I absolutely love this idea. What are we doing, in other words, to improve our relationship with God? What are we doing to try to improve our relationship with family? Both of those things can be hard and difficult, and both of them take work. I admit I'm not great at both, but they take work. But it's something that we should all strive to do. Are we good as citizens? Are we productive citizens? These are questions that we should answer. These are questions that we should pledge our fidelity to, our obligation and our duty to. We should call June Humility Month, maybe even. According to the columnist, the reason why, or professor, because in Western civilization, Christian worldview, pride constitutes the great sin of rejecting God. This is what I started off the podcast with, in favor of yourself, while humility represents a great virtue. We all know that pride is a sin. Those of us that subscribe to Judeo-Christian values, pride is a sin. Humility, on the other hand, entails surrendering yourself to God and reenacting in a small way the humbling of Jesus. That doesn't mean that we're weak people. It means that, okay, God created us. What did he create us for? It actually gives us a lot of freedom. What did God create us for? What am I good at? What do I, so maybe you're doing things that you have no business doing. Maybe it's a sin nature thing. Maybe it's a career, profession, whatever. But we surrender ourselves to God and we ask humbly, God, what do you want me to do? And God will reveal these things to us. It's amazing. But listen, Jesus gave up the presence of the Father to take on human form and become a servant among all of us, even becoming obedient to the point of death. So where some of you guys may not understand that, if you're not a Christian, I would have just encouraged you maybe to go to a local church, read your Bible, pray, ask God to help you to understand these things. Jesus Christ totally transformed and changed my life. He really did. The great Christian hope rests in the fact that God exalted Jesus after this great humility, and he will also exalt those who humble themselves in the way that Jesus did. This is according to Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 through 8. The word humility, it has this wimpy and it has this negative connotation. And the reason it does is because pride has succeeded because the LGBTQ, I can't even stand. I got to think of something else. I don't want to make fun of them per se, but there's just so many doggone letters. It drives me nuts because the agenda that they're on. LGBTQ plus anything you dream of the next day, whatever it takes to win an election, whatever it takes to feel morally superior. I don't care if you have to add barbecue chicken to it or whatever it may be. But the community. All right. Honestly, I always say this. Just as a side, I don't understand why the lesbian and gays don't kick out the B's and T's. I think bisexual people are confused, and I think trans people are mentally ill. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. But nonetheless, Pride Month, all of it is a sin and is affront to God. And it's absolutely wrong. So pride, where the word humility, again, has this kind of wimpy and negative connotation. Pride, it sounds good, right? The word pride has succeeded, the professor explains, because the LGBTQ community associates it with the message that human beings have inherent worth. No matter your sexual orientation, your gender identity, you can take ownership of yourself. So we look at that and we're like, what the heck? I mean, all of these things, you have inherent worth simply because God created you as a human being. He thought you were important. So one of the reasons why I hate abortion, it rejects God. It rejects God creation. It is women literally telling human beings, you're not important. God doesn't have a purpose for you. It's women behaving as God. That's why I hate abortion. But the proper response, he says, to this isn't just to negate what the LGBTQ plus barbecue chicken community says. All right. But to take the positive view of humanity and ground it in something more noble. So we shouldn't be mad or outraged at the gay community. We need to embrace something more noble than what they're putting forward. Instead of reacting to it all the time, we should reframe it. In other words, here's something. Ownership that he wrote. This is from a left-wing perspective. Ownership of yourself. This is what the LG whatever community does. LGBTQ. Let me try to be respectful at least. Ownership of yourself means little without the ties that bind us to one another. This is a very important point. Loneliness creeps into our hearts, whispering that social media or entertainment will satisfy us, but pleasures often ring hollow unless they are shared. He writes, and this is so true, the deepest friendships and relationships require a give and take context where each person loves and serves the other. I would argue this. I know a lot of people will disagree with me on this, but frankly, I don't care. I think gay relationships are easier. Frankly, I think that's part of the reason people go into gay relationships, whether they're female to female or male to male. I'm sorry. It is hard work trying to get along and become one with the opposite sex. It really is. Because by nature, you are so different. You're so different. So when it's a man and man relationship, okay, you can act a little more feminine, but you still have the same male instincts. You don't have to work as hard as you do with a woman, whether sexually or whatever else. The same is true with a woman. I think the relationships are easier. I mean, God just designed us differently. All right. So again, the deepest friendships and relationships require a give and take, a context where each person loves and serves the other. These bonds are familiar to us because we experience them all the time, even if we don't want to admit that the best word for them is duty. Now, here's fidelity to biblical perspective. That was the left-wing perspective. Here's the biblical perspective. Fidelity acknowledges your inherent dignity just because you're you, not because of who you have sex with, not because of who you identify with. You're a human being. You're a creation of God. You have an inherent worth, period, point blank. All right? It also forces you to consider the dignity of your neighbor as well. That's what fidelity does. It's not selfish. It's not self-seeking. You don't just consider your well-being. You consider the well-being of your neighbor, your community, your country. And sometimes you make hard choices and you make hard decisions, not because you're mean, but because with fidelity comes responsibility. We must be faithful not just to ourselves, he says, but to our families, our communities, our nation, and the God who created us. The LGBTQ pride movement is really selfish and narcissistic, honestly, when you think about it. There's a hyper focus on sexuality. Well, think about it. Why don't you see heterosexuals, I don't know, adapting some type of or adopting some type of logo and going around, where we need a month saying, I don't know, a Homo sapien. I mean, I don't know, heterosexual month. I don't know. Call it whatever you will. How come we don't do that? Because we don't have a hyper focus on sexuality. I really do think there is a mental issue when it comes to, and actually I know there's been a study on it. I haven't studied enough on that study to understand it completely, but those that hyper focus on their sexuality, there's a mental issue going on. Who you have sex with, or who you identify having sex with, is not you. Your sexuality is a very small portion of you. But if you're a man, you can also be a brother, and a husband, an uncle. You can be nice. You can be kind. You could be compassionate. You could struggle with anger issues. I don't know. There's all types of attributes about a human being. To hyper focus on one tells me there's an issue that you're dealing with that you've not addressed. So the LGBT, again, community or pride movement is really selfish and it's narcissistic because it encourages people to take pride in their identities. But Fidelity Month, if we had one, encourages us to fulfill our obligations to one another. It recognizes the inherent dignity of all people and encourages us to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. I love this. Pride views the world through the lens of self. And each person is indeed a magnificent image of God. But no person becomes himself without the help of others. I'm not talking about, what do those socialists say? I forget what they say. It takes a village. No, it doesn't. It takes a freaking family. It takes a mom and dad. If anything, a church community in conjunction with that mom and dad. All right, but now listen to this. He says, I can only take pride in my accomplishments because my mother and father raised me. My success relies upon the many who invested in my education and the country that established a culture that gave him opportunity. So that's parents, that's country, that's family, that's country. He says, my very breath relies upon the God who established and ordered ordered universe and fashioned me in his image. So he's got family or parents, he's got country, he's got God. What is the LGBTQ community back? The pride of the LGBTQ movement entails a rejection oftentimes of these obligations. The movement now denies parents the rights to educate their children on matters of sexuality, attempting to use gender and sexuality as a wedge to separate children from their parents. Very selfish, very narcissistic. And to separate those children from their parents' values. That's actually what they really want to do. The movement denies the goodness of America, preaching that the U.S. is an oppressive place for people whose very notion of individual worth comes from a declaration of independence. And we need to be saying that all day, every day. This is the greatest damn country that God has ever given man. I'm so sick and tired of the people that would say otherwise. The pinnacle of the pride is the claim that God holds no authority over us. You think about this. If a lot of people in the pride movement believes that God holds no authority over us, why do they always try to buck him and his people? You ever think about that? Think about that. The pinnacle of pride is the claim that God holds no authority over us, that we can choose our own lifestyles and even rewrite biology to tell our creator, the guy who made us male and female, that he placed us in the wrong body, right? That we can be transgender. So if God has no authority, why not just ignore him? The truth is, the LGBTQ community know that there's a God and they're running from him oftentimes. That's the truth. Pride is all about infidelity. It's all about breaking vows. It's about not just breaking vows, but breaking your duty to spouses, to children, not protecting children. As we saw in that video on Disney, what do you think that man is doing? Maybe unintentionally. He probably suffers from gender dysphoria, I'm assuming. I don't know. But what do you think is happening there? You think that guy is helping or hurting children? Little girls. Man. And to God, sexual liberation rests on the idea that marriage only lasts as long as your feelings do. And family courts will decide who takes care of the children. Here's the conclusion. I think this was really good. Fidelity Month does not come with a political program, all right? It merely represents a response to the endless barrage of rainbow flags as June approaches. And I think part of the problem, and I'm sure I'm guilty of this at times, we politicize this stuff too much. But the idea of Fidelity Month, it's just based on things that are good, that are pure, that are right, that are righteous. Family, country, community, God, obviously, God first. It offers representation, Fidelity Month does, for those who are tired of seeing the constant reminder that Americans' institutions are in lockstep with the sexual revolution, for those who are tired of having their faith demonized as anti-LGBTQ, for those who truly do want to live and let live, but who see any dissent from the rainbow orthodoxy quashed in the public square. Finally, it offers a subtle reminder, Fidelity Month does, or would, that Christians are not to strut about as though we are holier than the pride brigades. We're not. We're not. We are redeemed sinners, as he writes, called to faithfulness, not a mean-spirited pride or of our own, but we're called to faithfulness. And I think one of the ways that we can be faithful is to honor this concept of this Fidelity Month. I absolutely love this idea. But I reject the Pride movement. I reject Pride Month. What is there to be proud of? It doesn't even make sense. I think it eliminates the individual. I think it flies in the face of inherent worth and individual worth. You're just part of some movement? No, I think God has created every individual special and unique and according to his image. And I wish you'd allow him, for those of you that might be listening and leftists, I wish you'd allow him to speak to you. Guys, I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Again, this is your daily dose of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. Please join us on all any podcast, anywhere where you go to get your podcast. All right, subscribe. We could really use your help there. Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. When you subscribe, please rate and review. Give us a 5. That way we'll move up the charts. More people will see us. We're on all things social media. I'd love to see more of you on Instagram at The Carl Jackson Show. I'm also on Twitter, Facebook, True Social, Getter. The same address as Carl Jackson Show on Getter and Twitter. Everywhere else, it's at The Carl Jackson Show. But if you put The Carl Jackson Show, I will pop up. I appreciate My Pillow sponsoring today's program. I appreciate you guys for tuning in and sharing this video or sharing this podcast. And until next time, do not grow weary doing good, and God bless you.